Hello and welcome to the LLG Grapevine podcast. You're listening to Helen McGrath, Head of Public Affairs, and a very warm welcome back to Dennis Hall, LLG Bulletin Editor.
Thank you very much, Helen. Hi, everyone.
In a week mainly dominated by the Conservative conference, which incidentally saw the appearance of Nigel Farage, Dennis, you've missed a few other surprises these past 2 weeks. Mark Lloyd has stepped down as the CEO of the Local Government Association, and we learn that Rob Whiteman, CEO of SIPFA, will retire next summer. But back to that Conservative conference, and in particular, HS2. Dennis.
Well, Helen, I've been following the HS2 coverage from various vantage points throughout Europe after my trip last week to Vienna, Prague and Berlin. And to me, their stations and rail infrastructure seems years ahead of ours. Now, the future of the high-speed rail line has been the subject of constant speculation for weeks. And following Rishi Sunak's announcement that the northern leg of HS2 is to be scrapped, questions now abound about what this means and what happens next. And there are some seriously angry people out there, not least the West Midlands Mayor Andy Street, who said Mr Sunak's move would allow every Labour MP now to say the Tories have come to Manchester, in his words, to shaft the North. And Greater Manchester Mayor Andy Burnham said it was a betrayal of the North of England. Now, announcing the move in his key conference speech, the Prime Minister said the right thing to do when the facts change is to have the courage to change direction. So I'm ending this long-running saga. I'm cancelling the rest of the HS2 project. Now, there's been lots of discussion about the announcements he did make about improving the infrastructure in the north, including smaller schemes and road repairs, but experts have questioned the length of time it would take to deliver them, and indeed whether they would even happen at all. And let's not forget the large areas of land, along with hundreds of properties and businesses that were forcibly sold to make way for the construction of HS2. But the decision to scrap much of the project raises questions as to what will now happen to such acquisitions and what the government will do about them. And where does this leave the levelling up agenda, Helen?
There's a ton of coverage on HS2 that listeners can read about, including the fact that the link will now make it to London Euston, allaying fears that it might stop at Old Oak Common in West London. Of little comfort to the north, no doubt, however. Now, potentially controversial here, but I'm feeling brave. Dennis, you must in your career have come across at least one leader who made something of a poor show of it, left and blew straight into another high-ranking job in another local authority. This isn't restricted to just the legal areas of service by any means. Well, now, Croydon's Mayor, Jason Perry, has called for the law to be changed to give councils greater powers to hold officers and councillors to account. Speaking to the MJ, Mr Perry said it was fundamentally wrong that officers and councillors suspected of wrongdoing are able to resign and walk away. Croydon's Appointments and Disciplinary Committee had previously concluded that processes to enable leaders to be held to account as deeply inadequate. The MJ quotes a source at the LGA, which states that there are questions being asked about what the role the LGA should be playing in all of this, including whether accountability is strong enough within the sector. It's an interesting development, Dennis. We are seeing governance failings all around. The number of interventions, public interest reports, inability to retain significantly experienced and enabled staff within the sector. Maybe now really is the time that accountability finally becomes front and centre. Dennis.
Back on the 25th of July, the Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities launched a consultation on its proposals to make local plans and minerals and waste plans simpler, faster to prepare and more accessible. The government says that it wants local plans to clearly show what is planned in a local area so that communities and other users of the plan can engage with them more easily, especially while they're being drawn up. The government apparently wants these plans to be prepared more quickly and updated more frequently. And the government wants them to make the best use of new digital technology so that people can get involved without having to go through lengthy documents at council offices, and to drive improved productivity and efficiency in the plan-making process itself. Local plans are produced, of course, by authorities to guide and manage development in their areas. They are important documents for local communities because they set the development framework for the area, usually through a time span of 10 or even 15 years. And these plans direct where new development should be located, including new homes and places to work. They are important, of course, because independent planning inspectors hold examinations in public to scrutinise these plans and to determine whether they meet the necessary standards and national policy goals. Now, the consultation is asking for your views on proposals to implement the parts of the Levelling Up and Regeneration Bill which relate to plan making, and the consultation closes on the 18th of October. So please do get in touch and tell us your views via our forum page. Helen.
Well, from one consultation to a longer standing call for evidence. In February of this year, lawyers in local government and the Association of Democratic Services Officers submitted a Freedom of Information request to the Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities, asking for all information received with regard to the responses in relation to the local authority remote meetings call for evidence. The government refused the request, and LLG and ADSO complained to the ICO. Now, the Information Commissioner has now found in favour of DLUC in their refusal to provide the information we asked for, despite accepting that the number of responses submitted to the call for evidence did indicate widespread interest. We are obviously disappointed that the Commissioner has failed to properly hold DLUC to account by accepting that the government intends to publish the evidence, but without, it seems, any commitment to when the information will be made available. In a press inquiry response to the local government lawyer, DLUC said in relation to our comments that it is the strong view of the government that one of the core principles of local democracy is that citizens can attend council meetings to interact in person with their local representatives. Of course, we asked for the outcome of the call for evidence, not for the government's view on remote meetings. The latest standard response from DLUC confirms our view that the government has no intention of publishing the results because it's not in their interest to do so. The debate on the Levelling Up Bill is scheduled for the 17th of October. One can only imagine how that's going to go, given the government's response to the FOI article. Dennis.
An important date indeed, Helen, for remote meeting provision in England. Now, sticking with the local government lawyer, they've been speaking with Lawcare in respect of the state of lawyers' mental health and well-being. And in an article, the LGL states that there's been a 24% increase in the number of people contacting Lawcare for support so far in 2023, the mental well-being charity for the legal community has revealed. Lawcare said that this was based on the number of contacts from January to August 2023 compared with the same period in 2022. The charity added, legal professionals are overwhelmed and stressed, and these mental health concerns can be exacerbated or caused by the work environment. They went on, these are tough times for legal professionals adjusting to a post-pandemic world against a backdrop of global financial crisis with heavy workloads, unrealistic targets, and a workplace culture where there is still a stigma about being open and honest about your mental health. Further, the increased demand for support from Lawcare reflects the increasing pressures of day-to-day life in the law and the lack of protection of mental health in the legal workplace. Lawcare said that in light of this increased demand for support, it wanted to encourage employers to do more to create mentally healthy workplaces and protect mental health. On World Mental Health Day, which is the 10th of October, the charity will be launching new guidance for employers to help them take steps to protect mental health at work by reducing the risks legal professionals face to their mental health at work, also known as psychosocial risks, rather than waiting until mental health issues have arisen. Elizabeth Rimmer, Chief Executive of Lawcare, said, the tendency in legal workplaces is to respond to colleagues with work-related mental health concerns once a problem has arisen. The goal, however, should be to prevent these developing in the first place. Workplaces need to move from a support-based approach to mental health to a risk-based approach. She said, The legal workplace is characterised by inherent psychosocial risks to mental health, working long hours, poor work-life balance, meeting the expectations of demanding clients, heavy caseloads, the pressure of deadlines and billing targets, whilst maintaining high standards of ethical and professional conduct. Employers need to accept that there are risks to mental health in the accepted working practices in law and take steps to mitigate, modify, or remove these risks. Employers should focus on how the workplace can protect the mental health of their people, not undermine it. I certainly think that this is the correct approach.
And so do I, Dennis, very much. Now then, let's take a look at Birmingham, because we learned this week that the monitoring officer is subject to an investigation in relation to the provision of legal advice. So this request came from, quote, senior politicians at the council, which is recorded by Grant Thornton in their report, which was published at the end of September. However, Grant Thornton also noted in that report that, quote, as far as we are aware, the council had not commissioned or received legal advice that indicated that the monitoring officer had provided incorrect legal advice, noting in particular that the LGA was not commissioned to give legal advice to the council, but was rather offering a mediation and support role. Grant Thornton are quoted as saying that certain senior politicians have requested that statutory officers are subject to investigation for making notes of meetings and for providing a record of some meetings to external audit, adding, we note that we would expect officers to make notes of internal meetings and that the council was legally obliged to provide information to us insofar as we had made a request under section 22 of the Local Audit and Accountability Act 2014, and that section applied. Now, in an article by the local government lawyer, it points out that according to the report, the MO's advice regarding a council decision on its equal pay system was not followed, and additional external legal advice had been needed to move matters forward, and that further, members had been hesitant to follow the MO's advice until the council received an additional opinion from King's Counsel, and all KC opinions supported the MO's initial advice according to the report. Well, I think we've all been there. Now, I'm fortunate enough to be in receipt of a draft copy of the report written by the LGIU alongside Brown Jacobson and LLG in respect of the role of the monitoring officer. And I can tell you, it holds nothing back. It will be presented at the LLG conference in Birmingham on the 10th of November. And on that note, you can look forward to the bulletin returning this Friday with all the local government law and practice at your fingertips. So until then, it's goodbye from me.
And from me too.
Have a good week.